Spooky season is the best. Halloween is my favorite holiday. I get to wear costumes, I get to talk about cute games, and quite frankly, I'm not ready for winter. So, despite having missed the deadline by a wide margin, I'm making a Halloween video. Welcome to the Spookvember special. Choosing a game for the spooky season specials can be quite a challenge sometimes. Like, sure, I could just pick any horror game and make a video about that, but that's not good enough. Halloween is more than just spooks. Think about the best Halloween movies you've seen, except for Halloween, that one doesn't count. What do they all have in common? They're all fun and cute and quirky. I'm talking stuff like The Addams Family, Ghostbusters, Hocus Pocus, Beetlejuice. Most of these movies have pretty dark themes, but are still fun family comedies. And that's what makes it a Halloween movie. Not that it's scary and not that it's macabre. I mean, it is usually those things as well, but also, it's cute, it's funny, you know? And also, I'm overdue to cover Cult of the Lamb, so here we are. If you don't know Cult of the Lamb, it's a sort of combination roguelike and management simulator. Kind of like, I don't know, Moonlighter? The game where you manage a shop during the day and adventure through perilous dungeons at night. The difference here being that you manage a cult and slay rival gods. In Cult of the Lamb, you play as a sacrificial lamb, the last of your kind. But after your life has been offered up to the one who waits, he charges you with raising a cult in his name and freeing him in return for another chance at life. In order to do so, he lends you his crown, giving you the dark powers of an elder god and also a cool sword to boot. Then you're thrown directly into the roguelike dungeon crawling aspect of the game, fighting your way through a slew of followers of the old faith and toward your freedom. The roguelike aspect of the game is pretty basic. It's not as in-depth as something like Enter the Gungeon or The Binding of Isaac, for example, but I also don't think it has to be. The combat is easy to pick up. All you really have at your disposal at any given time is one weapon, one special ability, and a dodge roll. If you look at the weapons in a roguelike like Enter the Gungeon, you'll see that there are literally hundreds of guns to unlock and randomly find every time you play the game. Each of them has their own unique flair, playing differently from each other weapon and heavily influencing how you play the game. Not to mention, each of those weapons can be modified by other items you find throughout your adventure. In Cult of the Lamb, you always have access to one of up to 5 weapon types. Each of the weapons has their own cadence, mostly balancing how quick your attacks are versus how much damage they do, sometimes dealing a little bit more on the last hit of a combo. Outside of that, the only real variation in your weapons is through one of 7 modifiers, allowing your attacks to do things like land critical hits, poison enemies, or heal you, for example. In addition to that, you also always have one curse, your special ability that you can use a limited number of times. Just like the weapons, there are around 5 different types of curse, each with 4 slight variants to make each crusade feel ever so slightly different from the last. Since these are limited use, you might feel like you have to save them for tougher encounters, but each time you defeat an enemy, they'll drop something called Fervor, which will refill your little curse meter and allow you to use your curse again. And lastly, as you adventure through the world, you'll happen upon this fellow, who will draw a card from his tarot deck to dictate how your crusade will go. Each tarot card you draw or find will modify your abilities during the crusade, doing anything from adding an extra heart to your health bar, to increasing your attack speed, to making enemies explode after they die. The majority of the differences between each crusade come from those tarot cards. Of course, the weapon you get at the beginning might affect how you play or which choices you make when choosing new cards. However, generally speaking, your weapon and curse won't make or break a run, but a lucky series of cards could make you into an unkillable god-slaying machine. That being said, the weapons, curses, and cards are all that can affect your abilities between crusades. It's not a lot to keep track of, and since the loot pool is so small, especially at the beginning of the game, the roguelike aspect of Cult of the Lamb is a lot less random and a lot more predictable most of the time, compared to many of the standout roguelike genre icons. The combat is straightforward, with only 3 buttons to keep track of: your attack, curse, and dodge. You don't have any ammo to think about aside from fervor, which refills itself as you play, and the modifications you get from your weapons and tarot cards aren't so drastic as to completely alter your strategy halfway through a crusade. Each time an enemy is ready to attack, it plays a little animation and sound effect, flashing white and telegraphing its next move. And there's never a moment in the game where combat turns into an overwhelming flurry of little glowing orbs that you have to avoid while struggling to find moments to attack. In most roguelike games, that sort of thing is to be expected. Many iconic games in the genre are meant to be played in their entirety over the course of about an hour. The way that they gate progress for these sorts of things is to amp up the difficulty, meaning the hurdles you have to overcome in order to beat the game are purely skill-based, with weapon unlocks existing to help ease that process and give the game more variation and replay value once you do develop the expertise to overcome the challenge. This welcoming atmosphere allows Cult of the Lamb to do some interesting things for newcomers and more casual players, like telling an ongoing story. Usually when playing through a roguelike game, the story is mostly implied, with some story at the very beginning and some story at the very end. The rest, you have to piece together with context clues sprinkled through the gameplay and items you find and enemies you fight, maybe adding to some world building and lore, but never being too explicit with its story or messages. Cult of the Lamb, however, rewards the players for reaching new levels in its roguelike elements. Now, this isn't unique to Cult of the Lamb by any means. There are a few big-name roguelikes that also do it, namely games like Hades. However, the purpose of the ongoing story in a game like Hades and in a game like Cult of the Lamb is the same, rewarding players for trying their best regardless of if they're able to beat the game. That means there's no big difficulty hurdle to get over so you can play the game or so you can experience the story. You just need to tackle a little bit at a time. Not to mention, each crusade will probably last about 5 to 10 minutes, meaning that no matter how well or how poorly you do, you'll be returning to your base fairly often, striking a great balance between the potential stress of combat and the comfort of your goofy little guys. And if those 10 minutes aren't enough, you quickly start unlocking endless modes for the levels you've beaten, meaning you can return to them at any point and see how far you can get before dying or having to return to your cult. Of course, difficulty does steadily ramp up as you progress, and the final boss does make a big leap in difficulty, meaning you will still have to really prove yourself if you want to roll credits on the game. But the fight is absolutely doable. I wouldn't say you have to be some big-time pro gamer to win. Plus, if you do struggle a lot with the fight, the satisfaction of overcoming the challenge is absolutely incredible. The kind of gratification that'll draw plenty of newcomers into the roguelike genre hard and fast. By the way, if you like Cult of the Lamb and you're looking for another roguelike to play, I recommend Hades. By now, you can probably tell that the roguelike aspect of Cult of the Lamb works for a number of reasons. It makes for a friendly entry point for players who may not have played a roguelike before but want to play the cute lamb game. The combat is also extremely satisfying, making it a great draw for genre veterans. But mostly, the roguelike aspect of Cult of the Lamb works because it leaves breathing room for the other half of the experience: cult management. See, as you're adventuring and going on crusades, you'll also be collecting a bunch of resources. Things like wood, stones, food, or grass that you can't actually use in combat. These are for you to take home and use to build up your little camp where your followers live and worship. This part of the game plays out like many management simulators do, seeing the player run around constructing buildings and decorations and organizing resources, not completely unlike a game like Oxygen Not Included. However, unlike Oxygen Not Included, Cult of the Lamb takes a much more laid-back approach to this aspect of the game. Failing to set up a way to collect more resources early on isn't going to result in some crazy game over or anything like that, and if you find yourself in a rut, not having enough food for your followers or enough wood to construct a building or something, you can always just go on a crusade and collect some yourself. That small detail removes a lot of the stress that comes with playing management simulation games. Not having to worry about all your little guys dying all at once because you made one wrong decision early on is a breath of fresh air. I love games like Oxygen Not Included, but I always end up panicking the entire time I'm playing because I fail to set up steady streams of resources, and then everyone poops themselves to death or something. You don't really have to worry about that too much in Cult of the Lamb. Plus, you only really need to worry about like a couple resources instead of the confusing mess that this is. The cult management portion of Cult of the Lamb is absolutely my favorite aspect of the game, and the entire reason why I was drawn to it in the first place. There's something about the dark flavor of running your own demonic cult that stands out amongst management sims that usually deal with science expeditions, hospitals, and theme parks. Plus, the adorable characterization of the lamb and their darling subordinates captured my attention in a way that even a game like Honey, I Joined a Cult likely never could. That's no slight on Honey, I Joined a Cult either. It looks like a fine game, I've just never played it. I think what makes this game stand out mostly comes from the interactions you can have with your cult. Holding sermons for your followers to increase their loyalty and performing different rituals was one of the cutest parts of the game overall. I loved how all the followers would dance around and dress for the occasion, like when you hold the Holy Day ritual and they all put on these super adorable Hawaiian shirts in anticipation of their day off. And there's something kind of really messed up and at the same time super adorable when you sacrifice a follower and the entire cult seems all happy and impressed after their friend was just taken away by a horrifying tentacle from the realm beyond. And of course, there are the doctrines you can enact as your cult grows in dedication. This is where most of what makes your cult happens. Choosing things like whether your followers are cannibals or grass eaters, or if they would rather be sacrificed than grow old. Depending on which options you choose, you'll unlock completely different rituals or actions to perform with your followers, and it'll totally alter how you run and interact with your cult. Focusing on your cult and delivering sermons is also how you'll unlock new weapons and curses for your crusades. Kind of like how you'll unlock new items and weapons in roguelikes like Enter the Gungeon, except here you don't actually unlock them from the roguelike section of the game. That interaction between each major mechanic reinforces the experience as a whole, making each individual part of the game feel more cohesive and meaningful. Moreover, the aesthetic of the game matches the tone of all the themes already present in the overall motif, underlining exactly what makes Cult of the Lamb unique. The art style is super cute, but still manages to hit that dark tone of the game, and the music and sound effects are absolutely phenomenal. The soundtrack for Cult of the Lamb hits its mark perfectly, pulling together all the visual and gameplay elements, nailing down the feeling of the game and distilling it into something incredible. You know, I'm kinda surprised I never covered this game sooner. I mean, I probably would have if I wasn't so busy this summer, especially considering I had been following the game since before then, but none of that matters now. Cult of the Lamb is an incredibly cohesive experience that mixes two genres that at their core have a lot in common while still feeling super distinct. That's no easy feat. Many others have tried and failed to pull it off, but it is something that I always love to see. Any developer with the confidence and the aptitude to pull it off is incredibly impressive, and it seems like the people over at Massive Monster really have what it takes. And if that's not enough, they're still dedicated to bringing more to the experience, with a roadmap hinting at big changes and updates to come. At the time that I'm writing this, they're even working on a major content update meant to bring more depth to the combat and dungeon gameplay. Between these big potential updates, the welcoming atmosphere of the game, the sheer brilliance of the aesthetic, and all of my followers begging me to eat poop, Cult of the Lamb has quickly become one of my favorite indie games, and it looks like it'll be here to stay. So, if you love that sort of cute, creepy vibe, classic Halloween movies, the whole coziness behind Tim Burton's gothic suburbia thing, you'll want to give this game a try, even if you're new to roguelikes or management simulators. It really is the perfect entry point for either of those genres. I'm always sad to say goodbye to spooky season, but Cult of the Lamb was a really nice way to cap it all off. Until next year, happy Halloween.